What is going on, fam? Thank you very much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be discussing about negotiating. More specifically, negotiating for your worth when you're into interview. Now, we all know that one of the scariest things that a lot of people have is essentially getting what they're worth when they're getting a job. I know for sure that when I was going into my positions, whenever I was applying for jobs, I generally, for the most part, would always settle for pretty much like whatever they gave me. You have to put into two perspectives primarily, depending where you are in terms of negotiating. For example, if you're getting some low wage minimum job, the high chances of you getting the pay that you want is going to be slim to none, just because there are more people willing to settle for that job. And the easiest way to explain that is something as like a cashier at a gas station. The whole point of you understanding this is that if you're getting into the mid-level or at the breaking point of mid-level and right under mid-level management, that kind of position, then negotiating is something that you're definitely going to want to consider. One of the skills that you need as a person to develop throughout either now or you already have it, but you have to be aware that you have to develop it, is closing. Now, closing is the art of being able to close situations. And what it means to close is you know how to pinpoint, or you know how to put pressure on people's emotional standpoints, call out bluffs, send out bluffs, and of course, when the time comes, give a logical reason on why people should go for that deal. So what is one of the things that you need to understand when you're handling objections in the interview room? Well, quite simply, the question is, are you prepared to negotiate? So if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. I've always said, and I'm going to use a little bit of my scenarios, to always come in handy with a journal. When you go into an interview, the best thing that you could do is actually be prepared of the questions you're going to ask the company. So if you're new, if it's the first time you're meeting them, you do want to be in your best foot forward, in your best dress. You want to be on early. You don't want to be on time, because then that shows, tardiness, whatever. The question is, you want to be there, like, ready to execute your plan. And the thing is that you need to have questions prepared that will challenge the company on, and letting them know that I have no problem working for your company. You have to give me good reason why I should consider working for your company. Because one of the main things is you have to understand that it's very difficult for people to find good people to work for. And when I say this is, it's easier to hire somebody, it's much harder to fire somebody. And in some cases, it's easier to fire somebody, it's harder to hire somebody, vice versa. Because when you have A players in an organization, then it makes things much smoother for the company, much more productive, and then the people can see that revenue increase. If you are coming into an interview, you want to, 1, come with value. 2, set a higher rate to negotiate. 3, prepare for a challenge. And 4, know when to walk away. You want to know why? Because it circles back to point 1, knowing what you're worth. And it means coming in with value. It means that you have an expertise that is very rare to find. And generally, anybody can learn accounting. Anybody can learn how to do an email drip campaign. Anybody can learn how to put cables together. But when you have intangible soft skills, meaning you've developed how to pretty much start relationships out of nowhere and make people feel good, and know how to not necessarily manage people, but coach and lead them, that's intangible. You can't just learn it. You have to develop it, right? Just like any relationship, you have to develop that know, like, and trust factor. Going into number 2, you have to set a higher rate to negotiate. Now, a lot of people would say determined on experience. Well, your risk factor, when you put in your application, if they're asking, how much do you want to get paid? Go higher than you normally would. I've always said it's easier to go $5,000 higher and be very specific. So let's put this into consideration. If you want $50,000, I want you to go $56,250. That's the money that you want. That is very specific. You want to know why? Because anybody could put two numbers, 55, and then just 3 zeros at the end. Make it specific because you know that you've done your market research in your data. In your job hunt, you've done your market research and you know what you're worth. And that is going to put in the precedent, the pre-existing factor that you know exactly what value you can bring to the table. So the more specific you can be, even better, because they know exactly you're coming in with a plan, you've done your research, you're well prepared. When you set a higher rate, let's say you want 50, but you ask for $56, $250, well, if they decide to negotiate down, you now have buffer room to be able to negotiate down. Don't take less what you're worth, but negotiate higher, because if they say, oh, well, you know what? We'll give you $53,750. Bingo. You've already taken that factor of, well, not only did I get what I was worth, I got a little bit more. So it's easier to negotiate down than try to negotiate up. The third thing you need to be able to do is prepare for a challenge. Now, when it comes to handling objections, it really goes into the questions that you're asking the company. If you're preparing for a challenge, that means you know exactly what you're worth. So when you come in with a value and you set the higher rate, they're going to ask you, why should I pay you this? They're going to ask you, exactly, what makes you so sure? They're going to ask you to justify why you're worth that much. And really, the question goes to, how are you answering the question? Because you can tell them, because I have the best degree. You can tell them because I have this much experience. You can tell them because this and this and this. But the question is that if you can put in the most fundamental intangibles into the relationship in the interview room, the fact that people will feel like they know, like, and trust you, what you're going to be able to say is loyalty. Whenever you prepare for a challenge, the one thing people look for is trust and loyalty at a bare minimum. Because if I feel like I trust you, it's because I know you and I like you. That is the main fundamental, is that when you're handling objections, what is the question? Is it an objection? Is it a condition? Is it an emotional standpoint or a logical standpoint? It really depends on what you can bring to the table. There's going to be 100 questions the interviewer can ask you, but you have to be able to set in your soft skills of, this is what I can bring to the table, and this is what I can do for your company or organization. Lastly, the last thing you want to do, the fourth tip, the last strategy I can tell you is know when to walk away, because if you can't get what you're worth, then it's not worth their time, because then you have to put into consideration they're probably not paying other people what they're worth. They're trying to lowball people, which is not good, because what it does is it doesn't help in terms of really having A players. You have to develop A players. You have to pay them well. You have to give them challenges. You have to be able to give them promotions. If you can't do that, you're just going to get the low end of the stick, and you don't want that. So where did I learn how to negotiate? Well, really, once you understand those four fundamentals, I actually read Negotiate to Win by Patrick Collins. And what this taught me was the science behind negotiating. I love negotiating more than anybody. But if there's one thing I can tell you, is that everything is negotiable with the three tips. The first three tips I told you. But the fourth one is you have to know when to walk away. Because it could be the fact that, you know what, that company's probably not made for you. But if they can give you the idea, we can only pay you this. Let's say we can't pay you 50, but we can pay you 47. And you take that $3,000 risk, but within 6 months, we'll be able to do a performance review and see if you can get that 50. We can do that. We're just not at that point yet, which is why we're trying to hire you. That is going to be your judgment call. In which case, I'll be able to go ahead and put this in the link down in the description. But understand that negotiating is a science. The way you close is really boiled down to understanding what you're worth. And if you set in stone and you set the boundaries that you're not someone to be messed with, that you respect yourself and respect others, that's what's going to be easier for you. In which case, I hope you liked this video. Make sure you leave it a thumbs up. You should make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what your current problems are. If you're in an interview room, what is your current situation that's preventing you from closing? What are the questions that when interviewers are asking you that I can help you with, so I can teach you how to get better at negotiating to close? So I can teach you how to explain the difficult questions of whatever your situation is. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm now on Pinterest, Tumblr, and LinkedIn. Until next time, guys, Stay tuned. Take care.